Okay. Well, first of all, let me thank everybody for coming here. This is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. I think it's one of the difference makers. It's what really is bringing the use case to Lightning and to Bitcoin. So far, the narrative has been Bitcoin is a store of value, and I want to show right now how Lightning should be changing this narrative. So first of all, a little bit of an introduction by myself and IBEX, which is the company I'm the CEO of. So we do Lightning infrastructure as a service, mainly for enterprise clients. When when the news for El Salvador broke, we very quickly realized that, while Bitcoin at that point was fairly easy for the individual to operate with, it was very complicated for businesses to A, accept Bitcoin, B, manage any type of Bitcoin strategy within the company. It was also a lot of misinformation and miseducation out there. So we basically rolled up our sleeves. We decided that, if Bitcoin was going to have any type of success in El Salvador, we really needed to make businesses comfortable with the technology, comfortable with accepting payments. And so because we had a background as an OTC desk in Guatemala, we were able to do instant conversion. So, the merchants in El Salvador can use Bitcoin kind of like a credit card. And from that, it grew. It gave us our proof of case. We were at the start. We were doing the infrastructure for pretty much Chivo as well as most merchants in El Salvador. So I estimate we were doing somewhere north of the 80% of Lightning transactions in the country. And pushing forward a couple of months, going into the Miami conference is where I really realized the power of this technology. Because with Lightning, it doesn't matter what asset you start off with, and it doesn't matter what asset you end up in with. And you can just use it as a pure settlement layer that is hyper efficient and it's global. And the reason why this is the case is because we're secured by a global database. So the main friction that comes in with traditional payment systems is that there's a bunch of databases that need to talk to each other. So for example, if I'm sending a payment from Guatemala and I'm sending it to Costa Rica, first, my bank has to update its database, send a request to a US bank because it's going over dollars. So every transfer that moves on dollars goes to the US first. That's a requirement of the SWIFT system. So it goes to the US, where it's cleared by a corresponding bank as well as SWIFT. And then those two databases need to be updated. Then the money gets sent to Costa Rica, where again, the receiving bank has to update its database. So we're starting to see the problem here. It's a chain of databases that at any point in time can desync. This just doesn't happen with Bitcoin. And Bitcoin being probably the most liquid asset out there, you can get instant settlement into pretty much any currency pair of relevance. So this is something we do in Guatemala, something we do in El Salvador, something we're doing in the US as well. We're gonna go into Mexico in the near future, and it's very interesting when you look at it from that perspective, where you divorce the technology from the underlying asset. Don't get me wrong, Bitcoin is important because Lightning doesn't work without Bitcoin, but we don't have to care about it fundamentally to leverage, the benefits of having that global instant payment settlement network. And what does this allow us to do then is send micropayments. Now, micropayments, depending on who you ask, are defined as payments under $20 or under $5. Why is this distinction important? Is most of the world lives on, or 50% of the world lives on less than $6 a month. Sorry, a day. 10% of the world lives on less than $3 a day. So they're not micropayments. They're just payments at that point in time, right? If we want to really bring inclusivity, bring financial inclusion to less developed countries, we can't do that if we don't have a more efficient way of delivering value. But not only that, we can also we can do more interesting things, like which I'll talk about here in a second, which is the monetization models right now are broken. So think of it like this. Right now, all of our products, all of our services, or at least most, are going digital. So Uber is digitalization of taxi, right? Airbnb, digitalization of, hotels, if you will. Spotify, delivering music online, Netflix, etc. And what these mediums do, or digitalization, what it fundamentally does is it lowers the cost of all of these products. But as you continue to lower cost, you run into the problem that is, how do I monetize it? And so far we have, I'm sorry about this. So far we have three main monetization models. We have the subscription model, we have the ad revenue model, and we have the prepaid model. And each one of them comes with its own pain point, right? They're not ideal. We're not delivering value for value, which is what is paramount for a good customer experience. So in the subscription model, we get subscription fatigue. Why does this matter? Well, if I already have 10 subscriptions and I'm subscriptioned out, how hard is it for me or for a company to sell me on a new subscription? The barrier to entry they have with me is sky high. And I see it every day because whenever I go online and I try to access a new piece of news, now they're all behind a paywall, or most of them, like Financial Times, New York Times, Washington Post. I'm not subscribing to read an article, but I will pay you 5 cents. I will pay you 10 cents. And if I do enough of these micropayments, over time you might get me as a subscriptor, but not to start off with. Then the ad revenue model, well, you are the product, and that's flawed in itself, as we can see with Facebook and the like. And then the prepaid model, you're basically always afraid of leaving a donation, right? Because if you don't consume all of, the money you put into whatever platform, well, then you just donated X amount of money. And so they have serious drawbacks that can be, alleviated with a true micropayment solution, which Lightning is. And this is in the developed world. Now, if we go to the undeveloped or the emerging markets where people are living with $6 per day or $3 per day, well, subscriptions models don't even get started. So I'll tell you a little story. In Guatemala, a lot of people buy the hotel-sized shampoo bottles. The reason they buy the hotel-sized shampoo bottles instead of the full-size shampoo bottles is because they don't know if they can afford the full-size shampoo bottles. So even though it's more expensive, they go week to week or days to days, because they also sometimes they just purchase a single packet of shampoo to wash their hair with. And if you're in that country, you can't do subscriptions. That's just non-starter, right? But these are people that can potentially become consumers if they're able to, pay to stream a song, pay to stream a movie. They don't need the whole subscription. Maybe they just want to party that Saturday night. They want to view a movie with their girlfriend. And so you can potentially open up whole new markets for your business if you adopt, this superior technology. Now, the interesting part about it is that it also works both ways, right? Now you can actually send people, they can charge 50 cents, $1. And while $1 here in this room might not mean a lot, if you're living on $3 a day, you went up by $1. Well, that's a 25% increase in purchasing power. And that is $1 that if you have microservices, you can re-spend. You can educate yourself. You can pay for like a micro course on something. Now, I'm going to do a shout out here just because I think it's such a cool project. There's already a company working on micropayments to these people. They're leveraging humans to basically teach machines. It's called Stackworks, and so somebody that's in Stackworks can be earning insignificant amounts or very low amounts like 5 cents, 10 cents for identifying pictures, for identifying words, like things we already do that are easy for humans, really hard for machines. And you can kind of leverage all of this and bring a lot of advantages to parts of the world that didn't have them before. Okay, and so the case for Lightning. As I explained, Lightning is it's really right now the only solution. It's already working, and when I mean the only solution, I don't mean the only solution right now. There's probably a lot of private chains or other blockchains that are just as efficient. The problem is when you scale, right? Because if you're moving, I don't know, $10 million a day or $20 million a day, pretty much any blockchain will do. But this does not scale, because global payments, to give you an idea, in revenue generates $2 trillion a year. That means their volume is somewhere around $400 trillion. So that's what gets transacted globally every year. If you're wanting to do even $1 trillion in payments, you got to go with the most secure technology. The most secure technology, because that's real money, is Bitcoin. And so not only that, that's the security part of it. The other part, it's been tested. It's being tested right now in the real world. Like I explained, we're doing El Salvador. We're doing other countries soon. Guatemala has already started with a wallet that has Lightning. As the more entrants come into the space and the products and the services get more sophisticated, the cool thing is if you have this, right, every other customer or any other person that gets onboarded into one of your competition's solutions can interact with you. So in this case, what makes it really cool is that Lightning being an open technology, right? It's like email. So I'll pose a question here to the group. Why do we still use email? If you think about it. Because it really sucks. Like everything is better, right? WhatsApp is better, Telegram is better, Slack for companies, everything out there is better, but we still use email. The reason I believe we still use email is because it's open. And being open means you don't have to be on Gmail for me to send you an email. So if I get your address, I don't need to ask you to download a piece of software. I don't need you to, onboard with a company you might or might not like. Like you can do your own email hosting at home if you want. And that makes it really different. And so if I meet you online, I don't know anything, but I know you have an email. If you have any type of service. and I don't need to know anything else, and we can start communication. Then after, we probably switch to Telegram, WhatsApp, whatever, because yeah, it's easier, it's better. But if email was as good as WhatsApp or as good as Telegram, if it was a protocol instead of like a company, you know, if WhatsApp was a product, not a product, a protocol, everybody would be using WhatsApp, probably. And email gets dropped. And so we see right now a lot of competing ecosystems. And I'll tell you a story that exemplifies this. In Miami, when we did the Miami conference, we onboarded a bunch of merchants to Lightning to Bitcoin, and our solution is called IBEX Pay. Now, what was interesting was that people from the conference started going to these places because we had like a huge, you know, board where we listed all of the restaurants they could spend Bitcoin at. And they got there and they said, you know, do you take Bitcoin? And the waitress would go, no. And then they'd ask, do you take IBEX Pay? And the waitress would say, yes, yes, we take IBEX Pay. So it's so ingrained in our head that payments are these closed ecosystems that we're actually reversing, right? Whereas email started, or communication started open with email, and then it started getting closed into walled gardens, I think we're going to go the opposite direction with payments. And we should. Because the more payments you can send to the most amount of people, the more valuable your payment infrastructure is. And that is what Lightning is at the end of the day. And so, to close, because I think everything's better if you can experiment with it. Now, if you scan this, what you'll get is basically our payment terminal. And so, you know, anybody that scans it just became basically a waiter for IBEX. And if anybody, like your partner or somebody next to you, can send you a payment, you can charge them the 1 cent. And you'll see what I talk about, you know, micropayments. I'll also do a demo here with somebody. If anybody can is willing to charge me 1 cent, and I'll show, you know, how fast the onboarding process was, and then, you know, how fast the payment is. And we can talk a little bit more about what's going on the back end. So here's the phone, right? And let me scan it. And so as soon as I pay, it's received, right? I'm going back. So thank you for the microphone, by the way. So I don't know if anybody got a chance to do it. So how long did it take me to basically deputize David here and make him, you know, somebody that can collect money on my behalf? And then how long did it take for me to actually send him a payment? Not long ago, not long at all, right? And this is the power, I believe, because not only does this right now work, you know, in a brick and mortar situation with the same platform that we have, and there's others. You can go to getlitshop.io. I don't have the link right there, but it can be tied at an e-commerce website at the same time. So we're integrated with Shopify, we're integrated with WooCommerce, and I know, for example, if you don't like IBEX, I believe Strike is also doing their own integration. I believe OpenNode has some type of integration as well. But the cool thing is, for us, every other user that either goes with Cash App, goes with Strike, goes with, you know, Wallet of Satoshi, any other solution, these are all users that can pay at an IBEX Pay terminal, at a merchant that uses our technology. And so if you live in the US, for example, and you have Strike or you have Cash App, and now you fly to let's say El Salvador, because you want to go to adopting Bitcoin in El Salvador, and you show up, you know, at an IBEX Pay terminal without me or us as a company having to coordinate with Cash App, we accept the payment. And the merchant gets delivered dollars because we do instant conversion. And so we believe that is a really powerful proposition, because not only, you know, can we do everything credit cards do right now, but where this really goes to the heart of is we can go where they can't. We can deliver payments and values in such a small manner, they can't compete, because the current payment system just does not allow for it. The friction is too high. And I believe with that brings us to the Q&A. So, thanks.
Okay. So concerning the conversion into fiat currency, I think that's what you said. How do you incorporate fluctuation risk? So it's an instant conversion?
Well, this goes to liquidity management, and there's a couple of ways you can do it, right? So when you have small enough payments, you're probably just doing mark-to-markets, because you can always you know, count on the aggregate price to be a selling point you can achieve, you know, in the market. If you're handling bigger payments, what you do is you're just kind of hedging on the back end with some liquidity provider. And to be sure, you know, the presentation that was before is going to be a huge boon for this, because if you go into, you know, RGB or Taro, it doesn't matter. But if we are able to start doing transactions on stable coins, well, this becomes mute, right? But you need the Lightning infrastructure before you get to that place. And so now we're doing, you know, this delivery in, let's say, within 24 hours. That could potentially go away if, you know, stable coins gain traction.
Just one more question. From your experience, what's the percentage that the merchants hold in crypto and want to have paid out in fiat?
Okay, so it varies a little bit by jurisdiction, but for example, in El Salvador, where they are forced to take payments, I would say 95% want to go into dollars. In jurisdictions like the US, where it's Bitcoiners that are driving the adoption, are the merchants really, we're seeing basically the opposite. So 95% keep it in Bitcoin. Yeah.
Okay, and just one more.
Yeah, no, go.
Do you also support, let's say, the tax part of it? So the accountability towards governments in this sense?
Yes, we're in every jurisdiction we work in, we're regulated, right? And so there are jurisdictions where we kind of pass along, or are obligated to pass along information. We do that. This is what's interesting is that because there's a complete record of how much, you know, you sold or bought the Bitcoin for, rather, you know, it makes accounting really easy, because you're reporting on the fiat value. You're not reporting on the Bitcoin value. And then every jurisdiction is a little bit different on how they handle, you know, capital gains, capital losses, and that type of stuff, if you do decide to stay in Bitcoin. To be fair, for most businesses right now, this is a, you know, very tiny amount. It's non-material. And that's kind of like why in the US, where it's Bitcoiners, they just keep it in Bitcoin. They see it as another kind of accumulation strategy, or a way to DCA into Bitcoin, if you will. So,
thank you.
Absolutely.
What's your fee structure?
If it's the merchant solution that we're talking about, we're basically doing 0.5% for if you stay in Bitcoin, and then we do 1% for conversion. The infrastructure part of it, which we haven't really talked upon, is the product we deliver. Let's say it was what Chivo was consuming when it started off, so for the first 3 months. It's what we're delivering to an exchange in Mexico, a wallet in Guatemala. There's an exchange in the US coming online soon that's going to integrate. That's on a case-by-case basis, and it depends on the sophistication of the implementation, also the services we deliver, because payments is the start. What's really cool about this technology is that it's programmable money. So moving forward, we can deliver additional, functionality or services, if you will, over the same Lightning Network. And this makes it really powerful. So I think if you're in the space, you've probably heard things like payment streaming, split payments, cascading payments, which basically can cascade a payment through a supply chain, which is super interesting because for manufacturers, it is a huge pain point to forecasting, right? So a lot of money is put into forecasting by manufacturers because a 1% difference there is a material difference, could be multiple million of dollars. So what would be interesting is, let's say how supply chains are basically set up is you have the retailer, you have one or more distributors along the way, depending on regionality and other stuff, and then you have the manufacturer at the end. Now, imagine if every time you bought something like a car, right, which has multiple components, that car, a portion of that payment stays with the car dealership, which is your retailer, but then every payment behind it just starts to cascade down. And what's really interesting about this is that at that point, car manufacturers or the component manufacturers are getting real-time feedback on what is getting sold. So their ability to forecast needs and adjust their manufacturing processes improves significantly, which reduces the amount of security inventory they're going to need to carry. And so, delivering all of these extra functionalities over Lightning is going to be super interesting moving forward.
You mentioned you're only in certain markets. Is that due to regulation, or is it due to just go to market, or why you're only in certain markets?
Because we have limited manpower, but it's a little bit more sophisticated. So, for example, on the tech side, we could potentially deliver this globally. There are some jurisdictions that present a challenge. So, for example, anything that has an OFAC sanction, we can't really deal with. There are jurisdictions where they're not OFAC sanctioned, but you also can't really operate in just because jurisdictionally it's a challenge. And then if we go into the fiat conversion, that is very case by case on where we can actually have the banking relationship set up. But if we can do offshore settlement, that goes away. So, yeah.
Do you see any, or do you have any integration into any ERP systems, or is there any demand for it that you see?
Integration into?
ERP systems.
ERP systems. We're talking with some, and I think it's still a long ways away. They have other concerns at the moment. So we've talked to, Toast, Clover. We've talked to, what's the name of the other guys? I forget. So, yeah, so on that side, we talked to NetSuite as well, which is a big ERP. But that is one of the most interesting use cases, at least for me. What happens when you basically give a banking terminal to every business, and they don't have to depend on external factors. And what's even more interesting, and this is where I say this really takes off, is so you have to look at things from a multinational perspective. And it's weird because if you're not in the space, you don't kind of get a lot of the pain points. But basically, multinationals have 4 huge pain points right now. One, they assume currency risk they would otherwise try to avoid. 2, they assume jurisdictional risk that they would otherwise try to avoid, right? 3rd, they have huge costs of liquidity pools and liquidity management. And finally, they have huge cost of international wire transfers. And so if, let's say, a multinational, adopts Lightning technology, and either through a cascading payment situation, or, if you're like Apple, where you basically retail globally, right? The moment that payment hits, you're automatically in your base currency, whatever it may be. You can be pounds, dollars, euros, doesn't matter, right? So your currency risk goes to 0. Your jurisdictional risk, aside from like inventory and physical infrastructure you might have, diminishes considerably, right? Because your cash is out immediately. So you don't have any problem of, getting nationalized or anything like that, or frozen accounts. Then your liquidity pool management cost diminishes considerably because, it's all one pool. And you can send out payments, by the way, immediately. So with one payment, you can pay your whole payroll via split payments, right? So your administrative overhead also starts to come down significantly. And then finally, your cost of transfer disappears. So yeah, definitely ERPs and POSs are super interesting use cases that could leverage this technology.